Up and away folks, I hope you guys have had a very happy new year. Welcome to the channel if you're new, and I'd like to first of all start by saying thank you all so much for subscribing. I've hit 600 subscribers, in fact sailed past that now, so thank you all very much for your support. It's genuinely really nice. Last year has been full of ups and downs. I've been to a number of classic car shows and I met a number of you guys in person, and it was just really heartwarming to see. So thank you very much for coming along and saying hi, especially at Festival of the Unexceptional. It was really good. Now for a little bit of housekeeping. Judith the Jag still works. She's gone over 200,000 miles in the last summer, and yeah, she still continues to work. There's not really an awful lot to say on this car. This car just sort of works, which is more going to be said for Annie the Alpine. Annie has been very troublesome over the autumn and winter, and she's currently away with a chap I know over in Telford, just to have a little bit of TLC done, just a little bit of body working and other little cosmetic tweaks, just to make that car just that little bit better, a little bit more presentable. Now the title of this video is New Year and New Cars, and that's because my fleet has doubled in size since the last video, so I think it's only appropriate for us to go out in one of them. Let me introduce you folks to Patsy, my 2000 Peugeot 306 Cabriolet, and this car means quite a lot to me. Surprisingly enough, Patsy isn't a stranger to this channel. She's appeared in videos before, and she was going to have a full series dedicated to her. And the reason for her coming about was in January 2021, I received the news, which I don't think anybody who's in their 20s or indeed of any age wants to hear, which is that their best friend has been diagnosed with cancer. In December 2020, my best friend Typhon, aka Dale, came about with a sudden bout of illness, and basically it was appendicitis, or so we thought. He had a blockage in his bowel that caused his internal works to back up so much that his appendix just couldn't cope and effectively backfired. It wasn't until the next month, January 2021, when they analysed the blockage. It was removed, but the doctors analysed the blockage and discovered it was in fact a tumour. Now the first thought that came across our minds was, well, that's brilliant. You know, you've had cancer, but it's been removed. The entirety of it is now gone. So we just needed to wait for him to finish using his stoma and go through a small course of chemo, and all would have been well. However, that sadly wasn't the case. He did go through his first course of chemo, and that was where this car came along. So Dale and I, we realised that what we should do is we should do something to while his time away while he was going through chemotherapy. And we decided that we should work on a car together. We'd always wanted to work on a car together, so we may as well get something that we both really like. And we both love Peugeot 306s. Longer term viewers may remember I had a green 306 that was also Typhon's as well, that we called Paul. Paul was a naturally aspirated diesel 306, and that was where our love of these cars really came from, because we realised quite quickly that these are very solid, very fun cars that are incredibly reliable and surprisingly well built. And of course the fact you can get them so cheap as well, they are pretty much the best cheap cars that you could buy, or at least at the time anyway. The values of them have since shot up a bit. Now I found Patsy in the industrial estate where I had restored Annie. So anybody who remembers the early days of Annie the Alpine will know that I did that in an industrial estate outside of Telford, and it was in that industrial estate where I uncovered Patsy. She was moored up alongside a fence, and she was covered in moss and algae and other tree items, She was covered in greenery and foliage and all sorts of things, but she fired. On the first turn of the key, this car fired into life. And that could have only been a good thing. Now, another thing that Typhon and I really wanted to do was we wanted to get a grips with a convertible, because neither of us had had an open top car before. So for us to have the chance to get this 306 Cabriolet for what really wasn't a lot of money, I think we paid 450 pounds in total for this car. And we were really surprised when we got this down to Typhon's place, hooked up a new battery, started giving this car a really good clean and spraying up all the joints of the roof and everything, that the roof still works. I mean, it does still work, but there's a reason why I wouldn't open the top at the moment. So stay tuned for that. We wanted a car that we both liked. We both liked 306s. And also 2021 was our 5th friendiversary in the summer. So we thought that what would be really nice was if we got a car that kind of symbolised our 5 years of friendship at the time. And I remembered our very first conversation, which was at a Brumfers coffee meet, when I was sat there with my sketchbook, doodling away, not really joining in. I didn't feel included, and I was wondering if it was worth me spending the fuel just coming in and dealing with the aggro of Birmingham traffic, but I did it anyway. And that was when I overheard a conversation about the Peugeot 205 T16. I then turned to my right and I said, I believe that this is my field of expertise. And we were best friends ever since. Now, the pair of us were very, very different in terms of our car culture. I'm very much into the old school way of doing things. I like my classics. I like my, I like my good old fashioned engineering. Whereas Typhon was, I don't know, I suppose the sort of 5th gear, top gear generation, where it was all more performance cars and the likes. Just trying to straighten my camera. This mount is the worst in the world. But we were very, very different, and you could kind of tell that in our cars that we had at the time. So he had a Toyota Aygo with a sports exhaust, low profile tyres and big alloy wheels, and there was me pottering around in a Mark II Ford Fiesta Popular Plus, a car where the cigarette lighter wasn't available and you had to have the L to have it. So we were very much of different mindsets when it came to cars. But it's amazing that we found a common ground in the Peugeot 306, a car that we both really, really love. Now, what has Patsy been through to get her onto the road? Well, she returned to the road officially in August 2021. So after basically a spring and a summer, she returned to the road, and a few things have happened. So one of the first things we did was that we changed the timing belt and the water pump. So that was the first sort of big job we did. We changed the fluids and changed the brakes and all the necessary stuff, all the stuff for the engine's health and of course for the health of the occupant as well, or at least maintaining it. So safety related items and service related items, that kind of thing. And it was really good fun going through it with my best friend by my side. It was really good fun. We cleaned this car out, we gave the hood a really good scrub, and we even went up to the chip shop and just bought as much vinegar as we could to get rid of all the lichen that had accumulated on the roof over that time. So it was all a bit of a big learning curve. I never dealt with having to clear off about 10 years of moss and algae off a car before. I've always been quite lucky with my cars in the fact that they always kind of arrived to me somewhat clean. So this car was a big learning curve for me. And of course doing a timing belt. I'd never done a timing belt before. And I didn't have any lockout tools or anything like that. So with this, it was just a case of looking at the hardware and going, right, well, what can I do about this? What can we do about this? So we just went through that. Now, Typhon did a lot of jobs by himself. He was in need of a car. And when his first course of chemo was winding down, he really wanted the car on the road as soon as. So he took to having a lot of the work done by his local mechanic. And one of the jobs he's had done, well, you can hear it. that exhaust. Yeah, Patsy's loud and proud. Oh, there we go. There is something really good fun about having a big yobbish exhaust on a Peugeot. It's actually quite good fun. But it is a little too loud, I will admit. Sometimes when I'm driving around this car, I do feel like an utter Burke. This car really wakes up around about 4,000 RPM. That's when this car really gets to a song. It's actually really good fun, and having an exhaust of that noise is just, it's great fun, but it could do with toning down. Other things that Patsy needs doing is the hood frame needs work, because a common fault on these is that the rear pivots seize up, and when they do that, the welds on the rear hoop of the frame then basically shear, they crack and they break. So as a result, the back of the hood is sort of rattling around back there. The mechanism all works, but it's just those two rear pivot points are C-solid and, well, they're no longer attached to the rest of the hood frame, which is kind of annoying, but at least it's something that looks as though it could be repaired. It doesn't look particularly difficult. I mean, the welds from the factory weren't the prettiest to begin with. So that's something that needs doing. Other little things, I need to give this interior a good go over. I'm missing a glove box lid, or rather a glove box assembly, and it would be nice to do something with these seats, because these are the half leather seats. They're very Meridian spec, but yeah, some of the leather isn't in the best shape. It would be quite nice to find a full leather interior for this, potentially in red, and then I've got an excuse to have the hood replaced as well. I mean, the hood doesn't leak. There's a lot of wind noise in here. One of the jobs I had to do after I acquired this car was I had to get this window working. So it's operated by cables, and finding the right cable kit that works is a mission, as it turns out. Because I went through several cable kits where every single time it would just snap. Like, they would go into the door, I'd wind it up and down a couple of times without the glass, then I'd pop rivet the motor back in, then I'd fit the glass, and then up and down a couple of times, and then the cable would snap. So this was done in October, and fingers crossed, actually seems to be doing pretty damn well. Actually, no, this was done in November, so yeah, it's lasted a couple of months so far, and still works. Though there are a couple of other unpleasant noises. I was trying not to work that window if I can help it. Oh look, it's a Peugeot with Go Faster stripes. And another Peugeot. Another thing I had to do was I had to get this car through an MOT, and I left that to the hands of another friend of mine, and sadly the car failed on emission. So Patsy's currently got a new catalytic converter. We've done a load of other things as well. She's running with a fuel treatment in her at the moment. And still, no matter what we could do at my friend's place of work, we just couldn't get the car through the MOT. And then I decided I'm going to go to another MOT tester. So my friends down at Dale's Autos kindly took this car to another MOT, and she passed. Absolutely fine. The emissions were fine. Now, I came to acquire Patsy shortly after Typhon passed away last year, and it was decided by his family that I was right to have the car. That's what Typhon would have wanted, and I was in kind of two minds, because I had already agreed to having another car, which will be appearing in a video soon. But I'd already agreed to having another car, and I wasn't too sure whether 4 cars was a good idea. Did I really need 4 cars? Did I want 4 cars? So it was one of those. I was really half tempted to just pass Patsy on to somebody else, another mutual friend, someone who would respect the car and respect the emotions attached to it. But I'm glad I decided not to in the end, because the thing is, driving this car is actually really good fun. The steering was feeling really stiff, but all of a sudden it's actually lightened up a little bit now. So, quite peculiar. I just wish I could go out on a hoon a little bit more, but I'm currently in a 60 limit doing 40, because modern cars are so much faster than older ones. Now, what is Patsy's spec? Patsy is a Phase 2.5 cabriolet, which means that officially she's a Phase 3, officially, but the cabriolet's never got the colour-coded bumpers or any of the other refinements that the Phase 3's got. The only thing that these cabriolets got was the gauge cluster, pretty much, and some of the equipment, and that was it, really. Oh, come on, buddy, get out my way. Get out my way, get out my way, get out my way. I want to go in second gear. Second gear is my favourite. Now, Patsy's mechanical package is surprisingly underwhelming. So, Patsy has a 1.8 litre 16 valve version of the XU series of engines. Officially, it's an XU7 engine. But it only delivers 110 horsepower. 306s also weigh about 1,200 kilos. I think even in cabriolet form, that's how much they weigh. I'm going to go up this way because why not? But they typically weigh about 1,200 kilos. So, as a result, Patsy is a bit heavier than Annie, and despite having a 20 horsepower advantage, has the same 0 to 60 of about 12 seconds. Woo! See what I mean about that mount? It's not brilliant, is it? But there is something about the power delivery of this car. It is actually quite eager, but it's getting to the eagerness. That's the thing. These engines are very peaky. They've got pretty large valves, which means that they have to have a long intake as well. So that means they've got some torque. Now, when you're pottering around town, the performance feels absolutely fine, but it's when you're getting up to speed or when you're wanting to have a bit of a hoon, that's when things get a little bit interesting, because when you're trying to have a bit of a hoon, you have to get this car up to the sweet spot, which is around about 4,000 RPM or above, and it's getting the car up to that rev range that I find to be the most problematic part. But once you're underway, it is actually good fun. You just got to learn to hold into the gears for a little bit longer than perhaps you should, but she rewards you. Otherwise, this car is typical 306, so she handles really, really well, and that's due to the McPherson strut suspension up front and the torsion bar suspension at the rear. Now, I found out fairly recently that these cars have a form of passive rear wheel steering on them. So as a result, they do handle really well. This is the only car I've got in my fleet where I'm quite comfortable in running flat out round a corner, because the car just seems to grip better and better as a result. And the brakes are pretty good as well. They're not too sharp, they're not too loose is probably the best way of describing it. I don't know. But the brakes feel pretty good. The handling is really good. I get to drop a couple of cogs. How could you not laugh? That's fun. That is fun. This is what having a 306 is all about. It's getting a nice twisty road and just having a blast, because that's what these cars do really, really well. It's just, they handle, they are so easy to position on the road. Whoa, camera's going all over the place. But they just handle so well, and they respond very well to good throttle control. They're really good fun cars to drive. And of course they ride exceedingly well. I'm not being bounced around all over the place. These roads aren't particularly well laid. Whey! There goes the tripod again. There we go. But the plan with Patsy is she's just going to be in the background. So I'm going to be doing little things to this car here and there, just getting it to the point where she'll run a little bit better. I would like to put a little bit more power in her. Now, the problem is that these 1.8 litre XU7 engines, they were pretty much restricted from the factory. They were designed to be restricted. So it's going through those restrictions and making the car perform better. That's going to be the interesting point. Now, the first thing I could do is put on the exhaust manifold from a 306 GTI 6. That's one way of doing it. That extracts a little bit more power. The next stage would be to take out the original camshafts and replace them with those from an XU10, like just out of a 2-litre Xantier or something. I don't want the cams to be too leery, I just want them to make the performance just that little bit better, but it's finding them that's going to be the issue. Exhaust manifolds are actually surprisingly easy to find, and it should be a fairly simple mod to do, but we'll just have to see on that front. But that is Patsy. She is on the fleet. She is a car of great sentimental value to me. She's great fun to drive. And as I'm driving around the Staffordshire countryside with the dying winter sun, this is quite a nice place to be, I will say. You do get your odd trim rattles, like that door card is definitely not in the finest fettle, but still, good car. This is a car that I really, really like. And I think it's more than just the emotional attachment. These are fantastic cars to boot. This is certainly a little project that I could just have on the side for if I just fancy doing a little bit of tinkering. Like with Annie, throughout last year, I worked on that car because I had to. Because I had to get that car working so I could go to work or I could go to an event or something like that. Judith just works, so she never really has anything to do. But Patsy, she's got jobs that need doing, but they aren't too drastic. Like, they're not be all and end all, if that makes sense. So I think I'll leave that here. Thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you all of you, over 600 of you who've now subscribed to this channel. I genuinely can't believe that. That is fantastic. But I shall see you with another new car fairly soon. See you later. Your mobile coming through.